We do.
That the town report shall be delivered before the annual town meeting is connected.
Mr. Daly?
Mr. Moderator, Mr. Sylvia, and everybody present here, certainly an explanation is warranted. Yes, we do, Mr. Sylvia, still go by the town bylaws. We had our schedule in place. We, unfortunately, were pushing deadlines, and the printer had a problem with getting the report bound as necessary, and it caused the untimely lack of delivery today. We apologize.
Mr. Dodge?
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee would like to make a report before we get into the different articles pertaining to money. And I don't know if you pass over this article, where we would be able to do that.
The first money article would be, if this article is passed over, then the first money article would be the appropriate time to make a report which deals with the financial matters of the town. Yeah. Yeah. No, postponed. You're absolutely right. Mr. Jervie raised the point that the appropriate action on Article 2 would not be to pass it over, but to postpone it until some later time when we have the report before us. The report of the Board of Selectmen, or motion to admit, we'll take that in a second. I have several people standing. First we'll take Mr. O'Brien. Mr. O'Brien, please state your name and address. As Mr. Jervie pointed out a moment ago, that is not an appropriate motion. Okay, the motion is to postpone consideration of Article 2 until what time? Or until after what article? A motion to postpone is not in order. A motion has to be to a time certain.
Maybe the astute town administrator can tell us when we're going to get the report.
The town administrator has already told us that the town report is supposed to be delivered on Wednesday and therefore will be here in time for our meeting on Thursday. Is that correct, Mr. Daly? Yeah. Mr. O'Brien, you still have the floor with regard to your motion. Okay, the motion is to postpone consideration of Article 2 until the first item of business on Thursday night, what's that, the 9th of this month, of April. Is there a second to that motion? You've heard the motion, you've heard the second. Could somebody give me that motion in writing, please? On the motion to postpone, is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of so postponing action under Article 2, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion is carried. Article 3. I'm sorry, Mr. Canny has a motion to admit.
Mr. Moderator, I move to admit Adrian Gaspar of 22 Crestwood Road.
You have heard the motion to admit. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of so admitting, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Will Mr. Gaspar please sit in one of the 3 front rows in the section to the chair's right or the audience's left? Article 3. Mr. Daly.
I don't know if this is true for you, but this may be one of the first town meetings I've ever been to where people all through the room can probably read that. Thank you. The first, Articles 3, 4, and 5 in the warrant are what we refer to as routine authorizations, and they're necessary for the conduct of normal business by the town. They are voted every year, and we'll just run through them quickly unless there are any objections. Mr. Moderator, I move to authorize the Department of Public Works to accept easements on behalf of the town as specified in Article 3 as printed in the warrant.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation? Mrs. Belmonte. Finance Committee recommends. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Daly.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, I move to authorize the treasurer to enter into compensating balance agreements as specified in Article 4 as printed in the warrant.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation, Mrs. Belmonte? Finance Committee recommends. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Sylvia. Mr. Daly, would you care to answer Mr. Sylvia's question as to what this article means?
I'll be happy to. Under Massachusetts law, it's necessary for town meetings to annually authorize the town's treasurer to enter into what are called compensating balance agreements with financial institutions. Compensating balance agreements work in a way where the municipality receives services from the bank or the other financial institutions on the basis of leaving certain minimum amounts on deposit with those banks. There are financial statements that go along with those. The costs are all itemized, and the interest earned by the bank that would otherwise have inured to the town then goes to pay for those services provided by the banks.
Is there any further discussion under Article 4? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Daly.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to appropriate and transfer from 1991 transportation bond issue the sum of $169,490 for the construction, reconstruction, and maintenance of roadways in town as specified in Article 5 as printed in the warrant.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation, Mrs. Belmonte? The Finance Committee recommends. Is there any further discussion, Mr. Daly? No? Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Article 6. Article 6. Is anybody seeking recognition under Article 6? Mr. Daly.
Mr. Moderator, I'm going to make two motions here that refer to the regional vocational school agreement with the several towns that belong to that school district. They involve amendments to that agreement that's subscribed to by all the communities. It's necessary in order for these amendments to take place that 2/3 of the communities that participate in the district vote in favor of the amendments. If that does not happen, then the amendments will not change the existing agreement on the vocational school. Mr. Paul Sweeney, who is North Reading's member on that regional school committee, will speak on these after I make the motions. On Article number 6, I move that the town vote to approve amendments to the Northeast Metropolitan Regional Vocational School District Agreement as specified in Article 6 as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
Finance Committee recommends.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. All this article does is change the way that the school committee in Wakefield is elected. And this came up because of the power of the voting down there. We are the smallest community on the school committee in the district. And Malden brought up the question, they wanted more of a power voting, and this is the only way we could solve the problem about the one man, one vote situation. So this article should be passed. And we have the same voting power if you pass the article as Revere, Malden, Chelsea, and the rest of the member communities. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Sweeney.
The benefit is, if we don't vote this article, we could end up with 1/8 of a vote, and Malden could end up with 4 whole votes. Our voice on the school committee at Northeast Regional would be totally useless if you don't pass this article. And I recommend you pass it. Well, the reason for it is they have 254 students. They pay a much larger share of the budget. We have, at the present time, I think 40. And we are the smallest member community. If you don't pass the article, you're giving away your vote. And this, Mr. O'Brien, this has been directed by the Secretary of State. If we don't pass this article, he will tell us how we will do it. And we won't have a voice in it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the main motion under Article 6, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Article 7. Mr. Daly.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to approve amendments to the Northeast Metropolitan Regional School District Agreement as specified in Article 7 as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Daly. You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation? Mrs. Belmonte.
Finance Committee recommends.
Finance Committee recommends. Is there any discussion? Mr. Sweeney.
All this particular article does is change the language so we conform with the state law. I recommend you vote yes. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Article 8.
Thank you.
Mr. Daly.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the town vote to appropriate and transfer from water surplus the sum of $14,000 for repairs to Shady Hill Drive as specified in Article 8 as printed in the warrant.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation? Mrs. Belmonte.
Finance Committee recommends.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Daly.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members,